Good morning. How's everybody doing this morning? How's everybody doing this morning? Okay. All right, today is
What you doing?
today is No Frown Friday, so all the faces out there, I want nothing but smiles on their faces, okay? If you're not smiling, some things are gonna happen today. I'm just letting you guys know. First of all, how do you guys like the new facility? You guys like this? Wow. Right. We definitely want to thank Salvation Army, our new partner, for allowing us to be here today. It's a great venue. Give them a round of applause, please. How many new faces do we have in the audience? Raise your hand.
Yeah.
Nice little number right there.
Don't be shy.
So if you guys don't know how we started, how Team Scott Inspire started, we're going to let Ms. Rachel give you some insight on how we started.
All right, so about 4 years ago, Scotty and I wanted to get involved in the community with our family. And so what we did was we started volunteering and just going to different places like the Ronald McDonald House, Special Olympics, the Color Run, and started volunteering there. And then we decided to go to Philadelphia on a trip to feed the homeless. And that became a game changer for us, maybe. Better now?
I should have ate them baked beans last night. My goodness.
Only you. Okay, round two. So we went to Philadelphia. It was a really big game changer for us because at that moment we met a young gentleman who was about 17 years old and he had to drop out of school because he was homeless because of his sexual orientation. And that really, not yet. Oh. That really played a big part on us as to it shouldn't be that way. And so when we were coming home just talking about all the different places that we were at, we discovered that it was working with teenagers is what our passion was. And so from there, we said, you know what, let's go out to the school districts. Let's put our contacts out in the community and see what we can do. And so what we decided to do was offer these lunch and learn sessions for high school students that may have some kind of challenge they're going through. Doesn't matter what it is, but they want to achieve success. And that's why you guys are here today. Somebody in your school identified you as an individual, a student that wants to achieve success, that is doing well in school, has the desire to graduate school and do more with their life. And so then you guys come to these lunch and learn sessions where Scotty and I build a positive community support for you guys. So one last thing. You guys see the red shirts, okay? Homeless Youth Awareness is the month of November, and because that's how we got started, we wanted to bring awareness to this actual situation that occurs out there, that there are students that are homeless, and it is something that we are very passionate about because it's how we got started in the community. We'll touch on it a little bit later.
You guys, these shirts say Team Scott Inspired, but actually, you guys are the team. We are so blessed to have the guys that help us here. We couldn't do this without you guys. So it's a whole team effort. Obviously, the students are most important, you guys to be here. And then the team that we have, we don't call them volunteers, we call them family. So everybody you see, please give them the respect that's due. All right, so why don't you give those people in the back a round of applause, please. We're gonna go over some housekeeping rules. Well, these are all our volunteers, aka family right here. So we really thank you guys. Hopefully we got them on good side. We had started this last session. Any good news? If there's anything good you guys want to share, anybody out here want to share any good news, anything positive happening in your lives, now's the time to share. Anybody? Sienna? Oh, very good. Congratulations to you. Congratulations. Anybody?
China had some.
China?
Oh, I just racing on Saturday.
Oh, whoop, whoop, whoop. Anybody else with any good news? Well, let me give you guys some good news. Some great news. You all woke up this day.
Yes, sir.
That's the best gift you'll ever get, waking up. You know, so it's what you do with it when you wake up. How positive you're going to be today. That's the best news you'll ever get, that you woke up today. So let's rock it out and be positive, okay? Housekeeping rules with me real quick.
Just want to kind of give you a rundown of how the schedule's going to work today. Since we're in a new facility, I want to let you know the bathrooms are actually in the back of the room here. There's 3 bathrooms, so you have access to them. We're going to have our keynote speaker speak, then we're going to have lunch. We're having hamburgers and hot dogs, thanks to the Salvation Army. They donated. Then we are going to be taking tours of the building, and we're going to have an activity today. So just some general quick schedule to keep on track.
All right, then we're going to get a little bit more specific with things we're going to touch on. Respect. I mean, we're in a new facility. Whether we're here or at our old place, respect. You know, you give respect to everybody that you come in contact with. That's number one.
Next one.
Cell phones. Understand you guys are teenagers, that kind of thing, but when the speaker's speaking, we put the cell phones away, please. Activities, cell phones away. And these things are not non-negotiable, you know, so if you got to take a call, emergency, go out, step out, but when the speaker's speaking, no cell phones, and during the activity, no cell phones. You guys understand that? Right. Don't be this person. Okay? Don't be that person. You know, please don't be that person. When the speaker's speaking, be engaged. Listen, you might learn something. You know, don't be that person right there. All right? That's how a lot of you guys look. This right here is self-explanatory. I don't have to say much more about that. If you guys have a problem with that, we have some professionals that will see you afterwards, and they will write you a prescription for a belt. Okay, so we're not going to talk much more about that one. Another thing that we started is that every year we give our sessions a theme. This year our theme is don't prove who you are, improve who you are. A lot of times when we have real life struggles, we tend to overexert ourselves by trying to prove to people who we are. You don't have to, because you know who you are just like we know who you are. So you don't have to prove who you are, improve who you are. When you try to prove who you are, you're wasting time improving the person you could be. So let's not waste time on being somebody that we're not. Take advantage of programs like this and the people that brought you to these programs, because they're the ones that already know who you are. We understand where I'm coming from with that? Don't prove who you are, improve who you are. So now we're going to have our guest speaker. You guys, I'm sure, know who this man is. He's the mayor of Harrisburg City. He graduated from Yale. He is not a lifelong politician. I like that about him. He doesn't let that define him as a politician. He's more of a business owner. You might know him from his bookstore, Midtown Scholar Bookstore. Listen to what he says. You know, we're talking about your keys to success. Everybody in here has the key to their own success. And that's what I like about everybody here. Everybody is in here because somebody believed in you. Listen to what the man has to say, get something out of it, and don't be that mannequin. Mayor Pappenfuss.
Thanks so much. Well, it's good to see everybody here this morning, and I want to turn this into a Q&A, but I'll start by telling you a little bit about myself and my story and what it is that I do, and then you can ask me any questions that you have, and hopefully we can have a little bit of a conversation. And I understand we got about 20 minutes. Okay, so I am the mayor of Harrisburg, and there's no question that what I thought this job was going to be like and what the job has actually been like have been very different things. So one of the sort of lessons that I've learned over time is you've got to be flexible, you've got to be able to adapt to changing situations, and you've got to start with the tools that will really prepare you to be able to go in whatever direction you need to go in order to be successful in life. So let me tell you a little bit about my story. When I was young, when I was in lower school, I had a hard time reading. And my mother was a reading teacher, so it was really compounded by the fact that she understood the value of this, but it was really difficult for me. I also had terrible handwriting, and this was before computers. I know you can hardly imagine a time before computers, but if you had terrible handwriting, it wasn't that you could just type everything, because typewriters were still manual and old-fashioned. And it really set you back. So when I would write things, my teachers would have trouble reading it. I remember really struggling in school until I reached a point in middle school one day where I was inspired by a particular teacher. And of all things, it was a Latin teacher. It was a language teacher. And it could be any teacher. You've got teachers that I'm sure inspire you. And they took a little extra time to try and decipher my handwriting. They took a little extra time to explain things to me and to work with me. And I became inspired to want to strive really hard to please that teacher and do well. And I remember I sort of turned things around to such a degree that I even surprised myself. And I went from really struggling in school to being top of the class, to really being the best I could in that class. And I resolved that I was going to move forward, and I was going to get into college, and I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to be a teacher just like the teacher who had inspired me. And I knew being a teacher was going to require going to college. It was going to require studying really hard, getting a degree, being able to tell stories. And I graduated. I went to Yale, which is in Connecticut. It's a big school. It's a really good school with a long history and tradition. I was scared when I got there. I remember, I'm dating myself again, but it was before cell phones. And I remember calling my parents the first night, or first weekend that I had sort of been dropped off at college, having to find a payphone, walking out and calling them, and just telling them that I was okay, but knowing that I was really, really scared. And I worked very hard in college, and I was able to get into graduate school, and I was able to become a teacher. And we moved here to central Pennsylvania. I met my wife. Probably the most transformative thing that happened to me in graduate school was I met my wife, and we got married, and I turned my focus on wanting to start a family, have children, and I now have two teenagers, a 15-year-old and a 17-year-old, and they're all thinking about going to college now. And my daughter, just this past week, gave her senior speech, and her senior speech, I'm proud to say, was all about inspiring kindness in others. So a truly Team Scott themed senior speech. But we came here to central Pennsylvania, and guess where I taught? I taught in Central Dauphin. So hello, Central Dauphin students. I got to teach briefly for a little while, and I really enjoyed it because I was new to the area. I didn't actually know too many people, but I got to know a lot of families and a lot of people through teaching. And I always wanted to also have I had an entrepreneurial streak. I wanted to start my own business. I wanted to be able to provide for my family in such a way and sort of share my skills and bringing people together and creating a community space. And that's why I started the bookstore, Midtown Scholar, in that particular business. And eventually I was able to do that full time. And it's grown into be a pretty big bookstore where we have author talks and hundreds of people come, and there are book clubs, and there's all sorts of fun events. Now, along that route, there were headlines in the news that were really scary about Harrisburg. There was a lot of crime that was occurring. The city was on the brink of bankruptcy. It looked like taxes were going up. And without getting too technical, what happened in Harrisburg was that the state had to come in and take over the city, much like the state has come in and taken over the Harrisburg School District, because the elected leaders at that time had just not been able to get it done. And there was a lot of misaccounting and misspending. And I was very happy running the bookstore and being a teacher, and I didn't look to being a politician, but I felt that I could offer something. And I decided that I would run for office. And one of the lessons that I learned in running for office is the key to being successful is to meet people where they are and treat everybody with respect and with kindness. If you do that, you can cut through a lot of the distrust and a lot of the anger and a lot of the frustration that is out there in people. And I ran on a platform which was basically, together we can, meaning if we work together, we can fix this problem. If we fight among each other, we're not going to be able to get anything done. I managed to get elected, and ever since then, we've been able to sort of solve one problem after another. And I'll give you a couple examples of interesting problem solving that happens when you respect people and you work hard and you build a coalition to get things done. Has anyone heard of the Harrisburg Sinkhole and anything associated with that? Do you know what a sinkhole is? All right. Well, one day, right after I was elected mayor, a giant hole in the ground opened up. It's called a sinkhole. And the earth started disappearing, and it started literally swallowing some houses in South Harrisburg. Cars, houses, pipes broke, the whole thing. And a sinkhole is formed because deep in the ground there's sort of rock, and that rock, when water penetrates the rock and weathers it away, can cause basically ground from up above to sort of go lower and basically suck the earth deep into the ground. And anyhow, it was a tragedy because people had to leave their homes and weren't sure what was going to happen. Now, Harrisburg didn't have a lot of money, and we came sort of together, and we did a study to see what was causing this problem, and we did a map, and we realized that we'd have to spend millions of dollars to relocate over 53 families just to make it sure that everyone was safe. And there was a lot of anxiety and a lot of worry. And what we did as a city was we came together. We knew we didn't have the money, but we hosted a national summit. We brought attention to the issue, and we encouraged people at every local government to contribute towards the solution. And there was at the time, sinkholes were not anything which the federal government thought would be covered. Like if you had a disaster like a hurricane or a flood, those things were eligible for disaster relief, but nobody really understood sinkholes, and they weren't part of what was covered by federal disaster relief. Well, we in Harrisburg, working together, we got that done, and they got it covered. At any rate, today, if you go to that site, because we just unveiled a new plaque yesterday, it's now a park. Kids are playing safely above it. All the families that lived in the sinkhole have been relocated to other parts of Harrisburg, and it's truly a great success story. There's Salvation Army itself. This building here, it cost millions of dollars. Salvation Army had been located in Harrisburg and still has a building in the downtown and midtown area on Green Street in Harrisburg. They wanted a new space so that they could do events like this and create spaces where people could come together. But how were they going to get millions of dollars? And again, we worked with them. The city chipped in some money, the county chipped in some money, the state chipped in some money. Everybody worked together to try and get the resources together to be able to build this facility. It's been a truly satisfying thing to be mayor because you can actually make a difference. A mayor of Harrisburg not only can sort of bring people together to help deal with problems like sinkholes or building a new facility like Salvation Army, but we're in charge of the police officers, firefighters, the sanitation workers, the traffic control people that you see, and sort of rebuilding the infrastructure of the city. It's a very, very exciting time. But I never would have guessed that I was going to go in that direction. And luckily, I worked hard. I set goals for myself, which was I was going to overcome the obstacle that I had in learning. I was going to get a strong enough education to serve as a base for anything that I wanted to do, whether it was going into teaching or business or politics. I could do it because I set a goal for myself, which was that I was going to get a strong education. And I would hope all of you would set that as a goal for yourselves. You're on the right track by being here and by resolving to graduate and to move forward and to get further experience, whether it's going to college or getting practical on-the-job experience that you can then translate into anything as you move forward. That's going to open doors, and it's going to make sure that you can succeed no matter what pathway you choose. So that's a little bit of my story. You know I've got kids, you know I was a teacher, you know why I came to Harrisburg, but I want to hear from you. So raise your hand if you've got a question about what the mayor does, or any aspect of my story, or whether or not maybe some of you are interested in getting involved, or a job that has something to do with government or politics or the city. Can we get some questions? It was entirely self-explanatory. Okay, all right. We're gonna credit Susquehanna Township as being brave enough to ask the first question, but I'm looking around. I'd like at least one from each school district. Yeah. Okay, daily routine. Interesting thing about being mayor is it changes a lot. So today, for instance, I'm speaking to you. I am also doing a ribbon cutting. So whenever new businesses open in the city, we try and bring attention to them. We have a television station in the city of Harrisburg. It's right there, and so we're able to film a lot of this. We have a YouTube channel. We've got social media. We've got ways to help sort of tell a positive story about things that are happening in the city. So that's a part of it. But the rest of it is really behind the scenes. Some of the interesting things that we do is right now, the police department, all the officers in the Harrisburg Police Department right now are going into their roll calls when they report to work, and they are learning about a contract proposal, and they are going to be voting on a new collective bargaining contract for the next 5 years that talks about salaries and holidays and vacation time, and is and has some really new and exciting features in it, like the possibility of establishing school resource officers for Harrisburg, which we have not had in a long time, better partnerships with other community groups and organizations. So I spent weeks working with their union leadership trying to get that contract to the point where it is now, and now I'm sort of eagerly waiting for texts and messages to see how things are going, but I'm standing back, so that's going on. We're also preparing a budget for next year, and I've got to decide what new positions the city has, whether or not we are going to raise taxes, which we're not, how we're going to spend to improve like our parks and our playgrounds and our other facilities that are throughout the city. So I spent a lot of time working with the various department directors to do that sort of thing. So today, budgeting, contract negotiation, ribbon cuttings, talking to you all, and that's just on a Friday. And so it's a full-time job, and it basically I sort of come into work from my home, and then at the end of the day, maybe I'll stop by the bookstore, which my wife is currently running, and maybe go to an event there and participate in that a little bit. So those two jobs keep me really, really busy. Okay, other questions? In the back, yes? I would. So I'm a believer that any good business person or good politician is essentially a teacher. It's you're teaching sort of different skills. I enjoy teaching, so I taught language. I taught Latin, the subject that had inspired me. And I taught some history, and I would absolutely do that again. But when I started the bookstore, I spent a lot of time teaching employees there about how to run a business, account for money, describe books, organize workflow, all that sorts of things. And then running the city is really about teaching too. It's not just about teaching; it's about inspiring others, and it's about dealing with kindness. I believe that in today's society, especially with social media and I don't know, if you guys following the impeachment hearings that are going on today in Washington, D.C., there's a lot of distrust, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of frustration, and oftentimes that results in conflict between people. And I spend a lot of my time trying to work to bring people together and to resolve that conflict. And that's sort of the ultimate goal. To reach a common understanding is sort of the ultimate goal of teaching, and it's definitely the ultimate goal of how I see my job. And we're in danger as a city and a region and as a country in getting more and more polarized. So we definitely need people that are working to sort of use kindness and empathy to close those gaps. You've got a question? Okay, 2 questions. All right.
Okay, my question is, what time do you wake up and what time do you go to bed?
Okay, I get up as early as I can. Usually our kids go to school, you know, they have to be there by like 7:45, so the house is awake and filled with activity by about 7. I don't get up super early. There are people that I know that get up super early, but I have to stay up super late. We oftentimes will have meetings, we'll have either public meetings, community meetings, or other types of like city council will meet, and they don't start until after work, and they go until like 10 or 11 o'clock at night, oftentimes. So I'm not necessarily able to have a regular dinner schedule, and also it can be a little hard on the family too, because there are a lot of events and things on the weekends. And the other thing when you're mayor, when you're walking down the street, or you're going to the grocery store, or you're trying to do other odds and ends, regular things, a lot of times people have questions, and that's good. And you have to take them, you have to listen, and you have to treat people with kindness, but it means it's harder to do those things quickly and efficiently. So sleep is a bit of a casualty. You think that's enough sleep? Maybe. Yeah, probably not. Probably could use more. Did you have a second question?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Where's the bookstore?
Okay, the bookstore is right across from the Broad Street Market. All right, so it's that big building. It's got like carts out front. It was an old movie theater once. It is filled with books, and so that's on 3rd Street, same street as the Capitol, if you're not sure. And there's lots of events. We've got writers' workshop. We've got other things that are geared towards teens. We've got lots of young adult things, so it's a fun place to go. It's also a place where people go of all ages, and you can hang out. It's a nice spot. You've been there. Good. I'm glad. Okay. Questions in that row? Yes.
What is the confidence about different personalities?
So I would have to. So the question was, how do I have confidence to talk to people every day? Well, I think if you set as a goal that you are always going to treat people with kindness, and you're going to take the time to listen to what they say, and you're going to take the time to engage with everyone. That's the thing. When you're elected, this is one of the things you learn in politics, which is actually a positive thing, is that you have to listen well, and you have to be able to reflect what people are saying to you, whether they're a really important person, you know, who owns a big business and has lots of money, or just a regular person that stops you in the grocery store and is concerned about a need for a parking pass, or has gotten a ticket or a citation from a district justice or something like that. It requires that level of you've got to meet everybody on the level, and you've got to respect them, and you've got to take that back. So if you apply the same methodology to all of your interactions with people, you can have confidence, because you know that you're treating people with respect and with kindness. You do have to have a basic educational grasp of everything. I'm a big proponent in the concept of a liberal arts education, but basically you have to recognize that if you can graduate, and that should be your goal, and if you can get some form of additional higher education, whether it's vocational or in college, that will give you the tools to be able to do things like write a persuasive letter to somebody to get a job at a business, or compile your resume in a way that is clear, or formulate an argument in a way, or a case for yourself in a way that is succinct and to the point. So you've got to have a basic educational goal in mind to be able to get to that point, but after that it's really pretty easy. Treat everybody the same, with respect, take time to listen, and you'll be surprised. And if you don't understand something, people will be happy to explain it to you if you express a genuine interest in what they're saying. But you're absolutely right. I might go into a meeting with a labor lawyer talking about law, or I had meetings with scientists talking about the dam on the Susquehanna River and an approach to revitalizing the watershed, and then again and again, it's all sorts of different types of issues. You just have to sort of go with the flow a bit. Good question. Other questions? I think we're doing okay on time, and we can. We're just going to lunch next, so it's all positive. Yes, sir.
How long will you be mayor?
How long have I been mayor?
Yeah.
So you get elected mayor for 4 years, and I am in my second term, and so I started in 2014. So I am in, I guess technically my 5th year, and 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, my 6th year, and that's pretty good. It definitely, you have to learn, like with any job, there's sort of a learning curve. You have to get up to speed before you can really feel comfortable doing things. But that example, the sinkhole, and the example of this building here, they both started back in 2014. And they've only come to fruition here in 2019. Each of those has taken like 6 years to complete, which seems like a long time, but in reality, when you're working for big change, it takes a while. So, timing is a thing. Other questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Another question. I have to honor the Harrisburg questions for the front row. Yeah.
Okay, so you know how when you're the president, you only get 2 terms?
Right.
Is that how it is?
Term limits, right. There are no term limits on the mayor. So we actually had a mayor in Harrisburg, this is not a good thing, that stayed for 30 years. So it was just forever and ever. And that's too long. But I'm a believer that you probably need to, in order to really make a difference, you've got to have a certain number of years. Maybe it's 10 years as a sort of self-imposed term limit. But the bottom line is no, there aren't term limits. And other offices, like I think Patty Kim came and spoke to you at one point, legislators, they have to run every other year. So they're constantly running for office, at least like for president and mayor, it's every 4 years, so you don't have to constantly do it. Yes, sir?
How many more years do you want to be mayor?
I would say no more than 1 more term. And I have and we're talking about goals here today, so I have a goal. The whole reason that I decided to run for mayor was because I wanted to help the city out of its financial crisis. Then I'm very happy going back to my bookstore, teaching, and doing other things. It's a complicated story, but we now have a balanced budget. We got the city out of sort of distressed status. We're almost all the way back. We even worked to change the law on the state level to allow the city to have enough revenue coming in to keep a balanced budget. But that change that we accomplished last year was only a temporary measure in the short term. And my goal is to make that a permanent measure so that the city has a sustainable future even after I'm mayor. So I have a clear goal of what I want to accomplish, and that will make me feel comfortable going back to the bookstore. We're not quite there yet, but we've made really good progress. Okay, good. Thumbs up. All right. Final question from the back. I want to make sure everybody's had a chance. Yes?
So you know how you said with the city's like financial crisis, right?
Yeah.
That was your goal.
Yeah.
Would you ever choose your goal for the city's gun violence?
Yeah, no, I'm not saying I don't have other goals, but the reason, and we can talk about gun violence, I've got strong feelings on that. But the reason that I decided to step up and run was at that moment because the city was going bankrupt. And when you think about it, going bankrupt meant not being able to hire police officers, which meant not being able to have any type of effective community policing, which would have meant, and violence was continuing to go up. So it is related to that. When it comes to gun violence, I would say that's definitely the number one issue regarding crime that is facing not just Harrisburg, but probably Pennsylvania and a lot of the country. And what we need is a series of changes that have to happen on the federal level and on the state level, having to do with background checks being required and other types of tightening of the law. As mayor, okay, even if I wanted to, I can't ban guns from the city of Harrisburg. We do have some ordinances which are interesting. So we have an ordinance which says you can't carry a gun into a playground. You can't walk into a street and just shoot a gun recklessly up in the air. So we have certain basic state, and even those ordinances have been challenged, and we're in court spending lots of money trying to keep them, trying to defend them. They've been challenged by the pro-gun groups like the NRA and others that say city can't make those types of rules. There's a Second Amendment. It preempts even a common sense thing like that. And that's a battle that we've had, and it's a battle that we're continuing to have on the local level. But the real answers have to come on the federal level, because they're the ones that can put these types of changes in place. On the local level, we see that almost every gun which is being utilized in a crime in Harrisburg, almost every gun has been illegally attained. And there's a huge black market in the sale of guns. There's not enough enforcement of things like straw purchasers. There's no limit on how many guns a person can have. There's really no penalty if somebody buys a bunch of guns and then loses those guns, quote unquote, loses the gun. That's what a straw purchaser would essentially be. We have another law in Harrisburg which talks about the need for a gun registry, so that if you lose your guns, you have to report that to the police. That law has also been challenged. So we've got about 4 or 5 laws on the books that I've been trying to protect, but it's a complicated issue. How do you feel about the issue? Yeah, what would be your approach?
I feel like y'all aren't using enough resources. Like y'all have only limited resources when there's like a whole bunch of other resources. Like, there's too many innocent, too many of us are dying.
Yeah.
For no reason.
Right.
So like I feel as though, why don't y'all have, instead of local police, have state police come into Harrisburg and help patrol? There's more state police than local police. So why don't you have police coming straight out of the academy?
Yeah.
Put them in as the state police in the city of Harrisburg and crack down.
Yeah, that's good.
Task force.
So we do that. Have you ever seen the helicopter that occasionally appears in the sky? That's all state police. We have state police. We also have Capitol Police that work in the city of Harrisburg. And one of the things that we're trying to do, I mentioned the contract. I know it's all a little wonky, but the goal is to increase police salaries so that it's a more attractive career. Right now, we could have a lot more police officers, but there aren't many people that want to go into policing as a career. It's just it's not embraced. Does anybody in this room potentially fancy a career in either in some form of law enforcement? Because it's a great career. How much do you think a police officer does make?
40.
What do you think? I heard 40. I heard 60. What do you think? Okay. All right. So the answer is right now, if you're a young police officer in Harrisburg, you sort of get up to about 65,000, and we're trying to increase that. The new contract has patrol officers in Harrisburg going up to 78, 79,000. So it's a lot more. You also have the opportunity to make overtime, and you get good benefits, and and you get amazing experience. You can learn about things if you're into it. It's a great career path. But despite the fact that we've had a lot of open positions every year that I've been mayor, we haven't been able to fill them. People have not been interested in taking them. And that's very different than, for instance, firefighting. In firefighting, we have a long waiting list. We have like hundreds of people that would like to be firefighters. But when it comes to police officers, we don't. So there's a real opportunity for a good career. And you can actually be a police officer without a college degree. You can start early. There's a lot of things you can do. And we need you. So it's something to consider. All right, well, thank you all for those questions. We're going to have some lunch.